Hello and welcome to the Identity Podcast. I am Caleb, one of your co-hosts. It is an honor as always to be able to do this show. It's just such a joy, such a wonder. Very exciting stuff for this week. Cannot wait to go and introduce them. But I'm going to introduce my lovely and fellow co-host Tarik. How's it going, Tarik?
All is well. All is well, man. I'm so happy to be here. February's been quite awesome. So happy to all those great things. I'm so excited about environmental science, of course, but also happy Black History Month to everyone.
Exactly.
Happy snow day and all these climate things that we're going to chat about today. That's been pretty fun. And I'm happy to have our guests on today too. So I know this is a special person from you. So I don't know. Can you give him a bit of a great introduction? I got a chance to meet him backstage, and he's the man. So, but I'm sure Caleb can run it up. But just shout out to all the viewers and stuff, and all the fun stuff. So, haven't seen you guys in a long time. Let's get this started.
It's been a couple of weeks for you, hasn't it?
It's been some time. It's been some time.
Well,
yeah.
This man, as the famous saying goes, needs no introduction, but I'm going to give one anyways. He is a former professor of mine. He just recently retired from Millikan University in Illinois. My almost soon-to-be alma mater. Crazy, but very, very great man. I had the pleasure of taking a few of his classes, and I had the pleasure of learning just so much from him. And he's done amazing things in the communication realm and world, and especially in environmental advocacy and the environment as well. So I'm going to bring him on. This is Tom Duncanson, everyone. It is an absolute honor to have you on, Tom.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here.
Seriously, we're very. I know I personally am very grateful to have you on, and I remember when we first began the thoughts of planning the environmental series. You were the first name to pop in my head. I was like, I gotta get him on. I've got to get him on. And
it's so true.
Here we are.
Bill McKibben was not available, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
No, since we've ever started this entire series, since we started the podcast, he has talked about you for this position. So I'm ready. I know the knowledge and the things that you've done. Like, I know we could start there, or we could go right into what we were going to go to anyway. But I just want to just give a little bit of celebration, just to kind of some of the things that you're proud of, and what milestones you've created along your way.
Yeah, sure. So are you saying you want to hear a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think that one of the things that maybe young people ought to know about me is that I'm just old enough that I was at the first Earth Day in 1970. I was a 16-year-old high school sophomore in 1970. And I was on my school's debate team. And so we were all rounded up and put in a bus and sent to a nearby university that was having a major Earth Day. And because the next year, our debate topic, the whole debate topic nationwide, was going to be pollution. So I think that I can honestly say that my environmentalism began on the 22nd of April in 1970. And it kind of fixed in my head, and it never has come out. And so at different times in my career, I've gone away from it. I haven't always researched or written about the environment. But I always come back to it, and I really wanted to come back to it. I don't know, in the last decade, I just really felt urgent need to write almost exclusively about the environment.
That's beautiful. I honestly want to kind of teleport back with everyone, just to see what it was like. I mean, first of all, what encouraged someone and maybe this nearby town or whatever to do an Earth Day? That was, like you said, groundbreaking. So there must have been something going on before that. Did you ever hear anything before that, or kind of just
sure,
brushed it off, or did you? Yeah.
Yeah, environmental things were of great interest. All the news magazines were running features on it, and there were some of the most discussed books in those years were environmental books. Books like The Population Explosion by Paul Ehrlich,
Okay.
were they sold a paperback book in that day. A cheap little paperback was probably like 35 cents, and he probably sold 15 million of those things, mostly to college students and young people. But so Earth Day was really kind of, there was a big sense across the United States for sure, but really across the world, that it was time to really start doing something about this. And so, gosh, I would guess every major college and university participated in Earth Day that year.
Right.
I mean, they shut down the campus.
That's
They really
wonderful.
there was one
We have to
thing
do that
on
more.
that day.
Yeah.
And so I remember watching documentaries, and I remember speakers, and this doesn't sound very environmental, but being given tons of literature, and just it was, and it was a beautiful spring day that never hurts. So it was quite the start for this stuff.
What a spring indeed, right, Caleb? What was your first connection, Caleb? When did you get first interested in environmentalism?
That's a great question. I don't think you've actually ever asked me that question. Um, I've always kind of, found a likening and kind of a spot in my heart for it, and to definitely to try and help save the earth as much as I personally can as an individual. I would say it was really the end of high school when I read an article, and I'm wanting to say it was on Earthshare. I believe it was on their website. I was reading an article, and it was about um, trees. And I just remember, like, oh, this is something simple enough that I can do. I can go and, help peacefully protest and say, don't cut the trees down. Or I can, do better at recycling, and I can make sure that I'm not using different forms of plastic and such like that. And so it was just kind of a slow progression at the time of realizing what I could do for my part. And before I knew it, I was, recycling as much as I could, and probably the most recycle minded person in my neighborhood at the time, at least for a few years. And I got my parents really big into it. I mean, now we're like recycling machines. I really, I really tried to focus on, getting rid of plastic out of my life as much as possible. Unfortunately, it comes to the point where sometimes you really don't even get to choose. But it but that was a big thing, and then I realized just what it means outside of that, but also what you're putting in your system and what it means for you and what it also means for the environment around you. And so from there, when I became a vegetarian, that right there was one of the big milestones for myself. And it kind of said, I'm in on this. I'm all the way in on this, and I'm ready. I'm ready to go with it. I'm not going to be shy about it, and I'm going to put all my effort, all hands on deck on it. And it was,
Wow.
yeah. And then that's from there.
Yeah,
It's just
man.
kind of grown.
That sounds like it. That sounds like the same.
Well, I learned from the best. That's for certain. He probably won't admit it, but I learned from the best. And I took a wonderful, phenomenal class with him this time last year. We experienced the beginning of COVID together, I recall. It
Yes, we
was
did.
quite, we did. It was quite, I just remember every class, every Tuesday, Thursday morning at 9:30. I just remember going to class, even on my computer. I'd wake up and grab breakfast, and then sit at my desk. And I just remember you saying, like, how's everyone doing? And I just remember those small reminders and how
Yeah.
big they were, just to ask us how we were doing, because we were all, and this is a point in life and a point in our time right now that we can't, most people can't say in past generations that they experienced something like this, where every being is connected. And the fact that we were all, even though we all had like our own reasonings for feeling down, or maybe feeling good about certain things, we were all being affected by this certain thing, and by this same thing. And I just remember doing a project for the environmental advocacy class that you taught. Um, that was when I realized that I needed to be better with my voice, because
Ah,
I'd always done a lot as far as my personal self, and going out and being active, um, with smaller communities and groups, but it was being able to really put my voice out there and let everyone know, this is what should happen. And same old stuff, same the earth, stuff like that. That's when it kind of really clicked for me over the past year, that I felt like I could do more.
well, okay. Now I want to hear how Tarik came to his environmentalism.
I think he had to log off real quick. I think he's coming back on. I think he was frozen again, but that's okay. We'll get him back on.
All right.
Sometimes he's actually in New York right now, so sometimes his connection
Yes,
is a little.
I thought he was.
Yeah, his connection between Illinois and New York can be a little wonky at times, but
Hmm.
uh, but yeah. Well, in the meantime, we can continue, but
Sure.
yeah, and sorry for that long-winded
Mhm.
explanation there, but I just remember, for everyone who, this seems like a casual conversation to me, but everyone who doesn't know Tom has taught for years, and let's hear his. Tarik, you're back.
Hi, Tarik.
Sorry about that. The internet kind of went out. What did you
No
hear?
worries.
What happened? I heard you bonding. That was really nice. It came in and came back out, guys. So I missed that group
No
hug,
worries.
but I'll catch up.
No worries.
I had a
We were
question
bonding.
for you. My
Yeah,
my
go
Yes,
ahead.
pose it.
my
Pose it.
my question for you is how did you start in your environmentalism?
Well, that's quite the question that was coming around the room, around the globe, or the flat Earth. No, I'm joking. No, I think when I first started was that's what actually I wanted to hint at. That's why I asked both of you gentlemen, because you kind of experienced it at two different points in your life as well.
Yeah.
So I find that very interesting. But I feel like I've always been a bit of a natural soul to a lot of sense, or maybe it's because my family had some southern roots and had always talked about countrysides and just like that type of energy. So I feel like giving back to the planet has always been something more intrinsic rather than a conscious thing like, oh God, we have to save the planet. The doom and gloom of wanting to save the planet, I feel like definitely came about more closer to like I guess my high school years, and that puts me what so I'm 27 now, so that'd be around the 2000s, and I think that's when it started to get kind of trendy. So that's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because, like you said, you're a high school student. I don't know how trending it was to be the guy trying to save the trees, but I've loved every aspect of being uh, the things that were people were against the war, quote unquote, the hippies. So I think anybody that were tree huggers or anyone that was like consciously thinking about the environment have definitely been an ally of mine. So if you're an ally for oxygen or natural animals or anything to that extent, I think that's when I began. So
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
Caleb said, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's something that I don't think I ever share with my classes, is that I have a pretty spiritual sense of in the outdoors, and the wilder the better. I'm not sure we have any wilderness around, but as close as we can get to it, that is always really touching for me. But I never talk like that in class because I feel like my students as individuals and then you collect them all together, we have to get where we're going environmentally, whether you have that or not. You might not have, you might be a person who, has to stay all day in your, 80th floor penthouse for all I know, and you hate outdoors, but you still need to be on the team for the environment. And so I don't count on that sense of feeling, but boy, I get it, and I love it when I hear about it.
Wow, that's actually really awesome, and I think that's a great transition. And Caleb would probably agree. Yeah, I think that was a great transition, everyone, and all of our viewers out there. We've gone through so many different aspects of your own psyche, figuring out what you want to do with your life in 2020. From religion to love to whatever we get to. And I think obviously the spiritual thing has become a very much big thing on our podcast, but this transition is even more sweet, right? We transition our identities into like what we can tangibly do with all the things that we're feeling inside and the way that we practice our spirituality. And I do think it's tangible. I do think the rich guy has to come in. I think that everyone has to be involved.
Right.
I think we could get into all sorts of green economics. I don't know exactly how we're going to bounce around today, but I think all three of us are very knowledgeable about this, and we don't intend to be over anyone's heads. But I think that this collective brain conscious, other than just like fully educating you guys, more about the forward thinking of how this has been, because that's how I set up the episode when we first started. Over time, we have not only destroyed a lot more, but also gained a lot more. We have great legendary people like Tom Duncanson and this podcast. So I know that's a lot of gas, right? A lot of helium. This is crazy. I know I'm gassing it up, but I'm happy to be here, so that's why I just know how much you've done, because we can go into the London stuff. We can jump into like you said, the rich guy. I thought about that. So there's ways to change these corporate buildings into a lot more green aspects. So I'm all about the collective conscious, and you don't have to meet me where I am, but I feel like we can meet at a destination that we all should be at. And I think that's kind of how I've established it for myself.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, it's definitely
drops gavel. Boom. Perfect. I agree.
Wow.
That's good. No, that's good. I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree with both of you as well. I think we can definitely kind of transition into like this sense of the rhetoric of green economics and such, because I know that Tom does know a good amount of, and I will say, I think one of the happiest moments was when we confirmed him to be on the show. He sent me several academic and scholarly papers that he has written over time, and I think a few of them I probably have read before. I still have so many. I have so many papers from his classes still to this day, but I don't want to get rid of them because they're so knowledgeable. And there's every once in a while I look back and I think about different things and how they can still relate to this day. So we kind of transition. And so for all of our viewers, our listeners out there, what is green economics?
Yeah, please comment, like, share.
that frankly, that's really controversial. There are quite a few schools of environmental economics, green economics, sort of political economic, green political economics. There is, and within it, there are these subcategories. Like there's a woman in the UK who promotes something she calls donut economics, which is a really fun metaphor to play with. But here's what I think it means to me. I think that first of all, the word green is appealing because it does point us back to the natural basis of our life on Earth and reminds us that we have not done a great job in this area, and it's time to green things back up. So there's that. But I think for most people, they constantly, I mean, it's always presented to them this way, like by conservative forces. The conservative forces always say, the environment, that's a luxury. Jobs and jobs sort of obviate anything you want to say on environmental topics. Jobs. So shut up, jobs. And the reality is, of course, that we want to be shrewd, like mom and pop saving nickels and dimes. And we want to be thoughtful, and we want to come out of this prosperous. I don't think we want to go into a place where we have to accept a very small life of incredible poverty as the one and only way we could, live within the budget of our environment. I don't think people would accept it, and I don't think they probably ought to. And then, of course, that's a pretty middle class take on it. But then you stop and you think about, well, we've got 2 billion people on this planet who've been left out, even with all of the massive economic activity we have. They need to be brought up still. So I think green economics says that we got to engage this question in a way that it finally works. We're not going to pretend. We're not going to play. We're going to really get there, but we're going to get there without the kind of punishing austerity that always hurts poor people. And we're going to get there with a sense of the equity and the caring for the disadvantaged that we just have never been able to really build into our society.
Wow, beautifully said. I think you looked at it at so many different angles, especially sociology, which I think would be kind of where I would feel like draws me to environmentalism so much. So much of our environment has produced us, let alone the produce that we consume. And right. I think if we've and we had a guy on earlier who was awesome. I don't want to call him a guy, but he was really chill and down to earth. But from India, and he was just talking about the ravaging of what's been kind of going on around there, and also the growth as well. Not to just leave that in the dirt, because India has been making some pretty significant changes if you keep your eyes open for those type of things. But like you said, is the economical aspect of it on the backs of the few and the many, or is it to be paid for? Do we invest in research and development to continue to do it? Or it's all of these answers is what I'm trying to get at. And like Caleb said, we got to accept what we can do with what we're doing and be the best person in our neighborhood who's taking out all the plastic, or coming at someone because their solar panels are crooked and they're aiming into people's windows or whatever. But you got to be that guy, it's time. So, okay. But I wanted to get into all the jokes aside, but just the idea of economics and how much of a square type of topic. I'm going to be a hippie all day. So I'm so happy about this month because I get a chance to kind of talk like this. But how much has this been juxtaposed to capitalism from the first time you had your Earth Day up until people that kind of went a different route with their life? Maybe more stockbrokers, or I don't know who you kind of grew up with along your life, but people that maybe have become more divergent and more capitalistic, and maybe you've seen a difference in how they think about it since climate change and all these much more ecological disasters.
Yeah. You're asking a great question. One of our most radical philosophers today, a man by the name of Bedeau, who is a pretty mature fellow now, he's probably in his mid-70s, he lives in France. And he says that, the environment is capitalistic problem. And by the way, he's a Marxist, he's a Maoist. So he's really out there. But
Oh
he
God,
said,
yeah, that's good. I
environment.
mean, is that out there? I don't know.
That's pretty. I think that there are not a lot of people walking around with their Mao badges these days.
That's true.
So, but he says it's fundamentally a capitalist problem because capitalism is all about efficiency maximizing, right? It's all about, pay as little as possible, get as much as possible, get as many goods out there, make as much profit ultimately. But in the meanwhile, it's all about we've got to be more efficient. Well, that should be leading them to really careful resource use. And that should lead them to incredible efforts at recycling and projects along those lines. They should be the ones who've taken the lead. Now, clearly, they haven't. And so there's a giant gap between their promise and what they've delivered. And so, one of the things would be just to hold them to account to what it is that they say they're good at and make sure they are good at that. But, I don't see that's going to happen, frankly. I think that there are going to be a lot of government interventions. I think the whole point of the Green New Deal is that we're just going to build it all out and worry about, like who runs it and makes money off it later. I do think that that's the genius of the Green New Deal. We're going to put up, we're going to put the windmills in place. We're going to put the solar panels in place. And we're going to, put in the trains and the better mass transit, and we're going to retrofit the houses, and all, we're going to do all these things that we need to do, and we're not going to care too much about the economic system that ultimately, finally operates it. Because if we wait for these people to get around to looking at their bottom line, at the Fortune 500 companies, they'll take another 5 centuries. We'll all be dead before it will ever, come into place if we let them do what they want to do. Anyway, I'm talking too much. What are you guys thinking?
No, it's fine. It's usually there's you can see us visually, and we're just like stars, like stars in our eyes as we watch our guests just unfold so much. But yeah, I'm sure Caleb has a lot to say, and I have some stuff to say about what you just said as well. So I'll start a little bit, and then I can pass it to you, Caleb. But just the New Deal, man. Yeah, that's some snapping facts there that you're probably not going to hear from anyone else. So I appreciate you sharing your truth, man. I look at the Green New Deal and I think about the original New Deal, and given everything that we're going through right now, like you said, to retrofit and to kind of, I don't know, we're kind of trying to pull ourselves out and set ourselves up for the next, I don't know, some odd situations before we come into some sort of crises, because cataclysm seems to come in a statistical array as well. So whatever. But as far as the Green New Deal, I think that the biggest things that were gained from the original New Deal, which was in 1939 or whatever, during the Great Depression, were housing and setting ourselves up financially to create the middle class. So I think that when you're talking about the Green New Deal kind of being this next thing, it's like, who else is on the chopping block given the recession and everything that's been going on is, again, the middle class. And this might be a way for us to kind of like meld into the future. I do think the future is going to be a lot more EV and a lot more, like you said, who owns the technology? It's like, now we're green, but it's still being owned by the few and the so it's this never ending cycle of capitalism that's worse. But at least, like you said, they're kind of delivering on some stuff. I mean, Amazon finally dropped off the package. I got my potted chia plant, but
well, we're going to see if they're going to deliver. I mean, it's not clear.
We'll see.
We'll see. They're going to face a tremendous amount of political opposition.
I agree,
and a lot of people are going to be frightened. It's really easy to scare people that they are going to lose their job and everything that's kept them secure. So it's going to be a tremendous battle. But I do think it's really smart to not try to answer that super big question about what kind of economy we're going to have in some political economic sense, and just do it. Just go build it and use it. And then maybe like nonprofits will run certain parts of it. Maybe like traditional kinds of utilities like power companies will run parts of it. Maybe maybe the federal government would run parts of, there does not have to be one single answer for how we
Right.
get this accomplished and then how we live with it in the future. I mean, that's the beauty of you. Well, you younger guys, and all you young people out there, you're going to get to make these really hard decisions about how we specifically carry this stuff out. But it seems to me 2021, we're in a very optimistic place about at least maybe for the first time ever, sort of taking this seriously and building out the infrastructure of it.
Wow.
Now we can put it into place.
That's awesome. And that's just the US. And I know you can talk to us a little bit about Europe as well, specifically London and how they were operating. But
they operate hypocritically in London.
Copy. Okay.
They talk.
Hey. they're the talking guys. That's why they have such great English. Apparently, it's for all the talking.
They're the masters of English. 2 years ago they said they were completely done with coal, and then 2 weeks ago the prime minister said he wants to open a coal mine. So, they say one thing, they do something else.
Do another. Boris Johnson. Yeah. Well, we'll see about coal. Coal's definitely and then gasoline and all the things that have been going on with that. That's a lot of different things. But I think that the best way, like you said, the economics is more of like a socioeconomic thing. Just to kind of wrap up that topic, I think that we all can play a part. All you viewers out there, don't think that you're too small or too big. Don't get too, don't get too prideful about what you're doing or too humble. There's always work to be done. And I think there are several. Oh, he did mention jobs. I think that's something that we often talk about as well. And there's plenty of opportunities to put yourself out there in any aspect. Some people are communication majors. Some people can help out with certain litigation, or if more entry level, or you like hands-on stuff, I'm sure you can plant a couple of trees or whatever it may be. But there are jobs out there for those that are still looking for certain things like that. And I'm sure we can provide some resources at the end once we look those up. But there's tons of stuff to do. And that's what we're going to get into this, because obviously you're a teacher. And that's one thing that has been beneficial for you. So how has that been as a career during this time period? Or more or less, like, as far as the cool things that you've done, like, because I'm sure people would want to figure out, like, how did we become like this great oak tree?
Okay, oak tree. I drop acorns on people's heads.
Hey, Isaac Newton loved it, man. Believe me.
Yeah, that'd be me. Well, it's really interesting because when I was young, I thought that one of the greatest things you could do was have a career in higher education. I really encourage people to go to graduate school, and if they could, kind of pull themselves up and get themselves together to get doctorate degrees and to become professors. First of all, it's really fun and very enriching. Personally, and I think the daily satisfactions of this work are about as high as you can get. But the sad fact is, I don't think that the profession I entered into 30 years ago or so, 35 years ago, still exists. And I'm sure you guys have heard that most college teaching is now done by part-timers, but they're still expected to have as much education. So now you've got a PhD and you make, at the school where I was teaching last and where Caleb is soon to finish his degree, a part-timer makes like, I don't know, $2,200 a course. This is the kind of money you could die on that, right? It's like, you better have another job. So it's really hard for me today to encourage young people to turn to people and go, oh, do as I did, because that seems it's really naive. So, I think that there's still ways to I don't know. There's lots of ways to be researchers still. There's ways to affect people's consciousness still. There are ways to teach the young. So, all these things, they're like so deep in the human experience that you can't get, you can't make them go away just because you can't afford them anymore. They're still going to be there, and there's still going to be work for people to do. But I think it would be dishonest of me to say that I know exactly how that would work out in people's lives today.
Well, I thought that answer was awesome. I mean, no, don't play down yourself at all. And I'm glad that you were able to share that. I think that was very honest about what's kind of going on. And my heart goes out to all the teachers. We actually haven't talked to too many teachers yet. Maybe some mentors and like maybe spiritual gurus, but no one directly. Yeah, no, but it's just, I think that it's refreshing to kind of hear kind of what's been going on to these paramounts of knowledge and education and things that the amount of things that you've done just over time, the knowledge that you have for certain things, has its value for sure. It may not be necessarily in the teaching capacity as far as the infrastructure of schooling and stuff, what's been going on with that. But yeah, just so much other stuff. Like you said, like your writing, like Caleb said, your writing was really intense, and I got a chance to kind of look at some of that stuff, and it just your opinions matter, and I think that's kind of where it may be going now, where no matter what you're doing, you kind of have to have some sort of branding. It seems you're in the STEM or the science fields to kind of be associated with some sort of graduate program or stuff like that, mostly for funding, let's be honest. But the other aspect is just like you get a chance to actually do what you want to be doing with some backing from a college. So that's always great. But I think we all have to kind of step out. I think there's some people that are kind of starting businesses and creating green or environmental businesses, which have been really awesome. And I think it's a great time for entrepreneurship in very small ways. I'm not saying jump out and start doing so many crazy things, everyone. So forgive me for that. But there are
build electric cars.
Well, that's a good start. That's definitely a good start. But yeah, renewable energy sources for sure. That's kind of where everyone's kind of going with it. You can invest in it. I think that's one aspect that I've been kind of going with it for sure. So yes. Shout out to Tesla and all that fun stuff. But
Elon Musk,
yeah, what a funny dude. Meanwhile, he'll shoot a rocket that may not work right into the atmosphere and just like, so forgive me. Anyway, but no shade. I love Elon Musk, but I think that there's so many different ways. Like, but at the same time, like you said, on a much more spiritual level, I think we're kind of coming to this collective consciousness where it's going to be kind of spread amongst each other, where we're able to kind of just create it as more of a culture rather than like, oh, those guys over there are just recycling, and I'm in New York City. So if we could find some sort of, God forbid, I don't want to say crazy stuff like this, but some sort of vacuum or tornado to kind of clean up the streets, you might be in a better space. But I think just being in Canada and seeing other, like, this is in the past, of course, but seeing how clean things can be, even in Japan, just such clean streets. So our urban areas, like, what's your take on kind of the economics of what's been going on with that and the shift from urban to homes? And like, maybe, I think, Caleb, did you want to ask him and pose him that question that you had asked earlier? I think, was it nuclear versus, do you remember, Caleb?
Oh, nuclear versus solar power?
Nuclear versus solar. And obviously we were thinking about homes and home stays there. So what do you think about green domestic economics, I guess?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that that nuclear energy has a whole big industry behind it. And so lots of claims get made on behalf of nuclear energy that are not supported when you actually get in and look at both the engineering and the economic analysis. One of the things that well, Caleb might remember this because I'm sure I said it in class a time or two, but I think most people would be surprised to learn that we have more nuclear power in Illinois than any other state.
Yep.
But on the other hand, we have not been able to bring a new reactor online since the mid 70s, which is the reactor that's near to Decatur, where Caleb lives. It's the Clinton nuclear power plant. Those things are so expensive. They are so dangerous that you have to probably pour all the concrete in the plant like 2-3 times, because if you do it and there's just slightly too much moisture, the inspectors will come through and tear it out. And so and then you start over again. It's that precise in these massive plants that are dealing with 1,000,000-degree temperatures, and that have to then cool that with cooling water and dump all that water somewhere. They are environmental nightmares, and frankly, they are security nightmares. I mean, they're always targets for people who would like to do a lot of a horrific kind of damage. So right. I don't think there is any comparison.
Yes,
I mean, they're powerful, and you can say, oh well, we're getting so many kilowatts here, but compared to your little solar panels or your homely windmills. But the reality is that they're a terrible deal economically. And here in Illinois, they are so bad economically. They don't compete with coal. They don't compete with fracked gas, and they don't compete with solar and wind. The companies that run them want to take 3 of them offline because there's just no market for it. It is not the cheapest electricity, or the second cheapest, or the third cheapest, or the fourth cheapest form of electricity. So when the nuclear industry comes and tells you that this is the way we can meet everybody's needs in a way that is that doesn't add any heat or carbon to the atmosphere, they are kind of playing fast and loose with the facts.
That's right. Caleb, did I say that? I think I said something like that, something close to that. Probably the last 3 words, maybe. I don't know.
Well, you didn't. You didn't say word for word. It wasn't as insightful,
it sounded kind of like what I said. No, I'm just joking. That was phenomenal. That was phenomenal. No, I'm just bothering Caleb.
Illinois part. But you probably had you didn't have the Illinois part, but you probably had the rest.
Right. No, actually, yes. Yeah, that was all news to me. I had no idea about Illinois, so I was baffled by that. No, I didn't say it nearly as eloquent as you. I was being silly, but I totally agree. I said Caleb and I were just like, there's just not enough information about it. Like, we don't know. Like, I mean, there's a lot of projections. There's a lot of things that are like it could be more efficient, but like you said, it's a ticking time bomb, and I don't think any Supermen are about to be made anytime soon. So. Otherwise, it's just fallout, and now we have to deal with that for a long period of time. So, I don't know. I'm not interested in it. And
then you have to guard the waste then for 50,000 years. And the question that we've been asking for 50 years is what have human beings ever done for 50,000 years except eat, sleep, and poop? Except for that.
That's as far as we've gotten.
We've never done anything for 50,000 years. I mean, it's one thing to like commit your children and your grandchildren to a project that may, in fact, may not be great, may be foolish, but damn, this is basically committing the whole future of your species to guard nuclear waste. I mean, if that, I mean, and the industry really shouldn't be able to just brush off that,
You're right.
We still don't have a place to store it in the United States. It's been collecting since the 1940s, and most of it's saved on site. And we can't agree to any particular place. We can't agree that we can put it under a mountain in Nevada. And if you can't put it under a mountain in Nevada, then basically you can't put it anywhere. So, we're just, it's just not politically feasible. Nobody, we talk all the time in environmental advocacy about NIMBY, not in my backyard. Well,
Right.
everybody pretty much agrees we don't want nuclear waste in our backyard. It's
right.
It's not like the next community over is going to go, oh, damn, I'll take that nuclear waste.
I'll take a little nuclear over here.
if you pay
Just
me,
serving it up.
Right? If you build this new grade school, I'll take it. No, there's no community that's willing to say that. Not the poorest, not the least well informed.
That's true. I mean, I don't know. Maybe for some super rocket or something that we can shoot out to galaxies. I don't know. I'm getting too metaphysical there, but I think that's the only time you would need that much energy for that amount of time. Though, like you said, there's no container and there's no real way to kind of allocate it in an efficient way. It just kind of it's just there. But solar's good. Solar has some jobs available as well, to put that out there for all you career searchers and our demographic ranges. So any of you young cats out there. But solar's great. I think that the technology is on the come up. I mean, if you want to hear about nuclear fusion, you might as well just get it from the source, from the sun. So rather than have it in your hands in your backyard, but that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so I think the windmills are awesome too. And I think going back to the idea of just kind of moving away from the urban cities, given the idea of the ideas of 5G and maybe some things that have been kind of weird with that, some people that have experienced some weird issues from being around them, psychosomatic or whatever concerning. But I just think that the more we kind of industrialize, the more we get away from the original goal, which is what we were originally talking about in the beginning. So whatever we put in, whether it's a bunch of trees, which can sometimes change an entire environment as well, or some of the trees that were planted catching fire in all sorts of places, that's all definitely what we were kind of coming back full circle to. And not to give climate change only 10 or 15 minutes, but just a lot of things that have shifted due to not only what is the earth likes to go through its own motions, but also just like you said, what on earth have we been doing for 50,000 years? But creating noxious gas and putting different monoliths up in a lot of different ways. So I think it's kind of like let me help you help us.
Help me
help me keep helping. But yeah, the earth has been happy. I think with some of the things that we've been pulling back on. So especially from the idea of nature and stuff. So I just wanted to add that tidbit. So all the dolphins, and shout out to all the deer that were able to kind of free roam for a bit and change the ecosystem up. I think in a much more, green environment, if things happen in what you say. So in your time period, you said that the things that were supposed to be mentioned, in high school, are now coming to full fruition. Well, it's being talked about, I guess, is what you said, Tom. But if we that it's kind of cutting exponentially from there, give or take, we could see some real significant changes in 10 years. So if we see that, especially on a global scale, I think that we can kind of figure out what the next energy source is in some sort of grander scheme for sure. But let's just kind of clean up the mess, in the meantime, and then kind of make that more efficient for sure. So you want to chat a little bit about climate change before we end? Or
sure. Do you guys have a specific question?
We have plenty of time.
One of the things that I have been to 4 of the United Nations climate meetings. I've been to the Conference of the Parties, which those are the big international meetings that are held every year in the fall. I've been to the one in Bonn in 2017. I was at the one in Madrid in 2019. Of course, we weren't able to have one in 2020. The one in 2021 will be in Glasgow, Scotland, and I'm pretty sure I'll go to that. And I've also been to 2 of the meetings that are way better. They're the meetings where the diplomats, people, you and I can actually get in the room where the diplomats are negotiating the specific implementation agreements. And
Wow.
so I've been to 2 of those in Bonn, Germany. So yeah, I might be able to say something about climate change, the climate change politics, if you guys can come up with a question or two for me.
I didn't even, yeah, those accolades are awesome. And wait, where is Glasgow? Not to sound so prudish.
It's on
Where?
the west coast of Scotland.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why they chose that, or?
Oh, I think the United Kingdom sort of bid for it, and they wanted to put it into a city that they wanted to feature, that deserved some global attention. I think it's a little bit like landing a big like any other big convention. It was like getting the World Series or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like
right.
It's the Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the Olympics. Now that's a pretty good parallel. It's like, oh, it's the Tokyo Olympics. What's going to be the
Right.
Glasgow Conference of the Parties?
Right. That's pretty awesome.
It's
That you
pretty
can kind of just like sit right there and see what's going on. And I
Yeah.
think, like you said, your voice means so much. I think that this episode has come, your identity is what your voice is. And honestly, if we go back to Earth Day, I don't know who you heard or shout out to that person, but whatever it did, it sparked something in you. And I think gaining more knowledge about this, and using your voice is actually how we're going to kind of connect and kind of change this. But I guess my thoughts are, given the climate, I guess Caleb may have his question, I'll have mine. But my thought on climate crisis is there are some naysayers in a lot of aspects, which I don't understand, but that doesn't really make too much sense to me. But I would love to see kind of what have you heard on both sides of the argument of kind of how we can kind of adjust the climate crisis,
Yeah.
not necessarily, and I think we kind of talked on it earlier, but more as a country aspect, kind of the global economic aspect, I think, since you do have a pretty good idea of where all of these diplomats are coming from.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've learned is that the diplomats pretty drastically disagree with one another. The meetings are very polarized between, to make it really simple, the rich countries versus the poor countries. And the poor countries seem to be so smart about things. They want a kind of a multifaceted approach where if you're on a ocean coast, they will build seawalls in order to protect themselves from being inundated. And if they are in an equatorial zone, where they get so much sunshine, they will be identified as ideal places to put just industries of solar energy. And they see it very urgently, because if they don't get help, then they are going to have millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of refugees. This is you young people's future. I'll be long gone, but in 20 years, they're going to be, you people are going to be basically asking hard questions like, how do you keep 20 million people from flooding out of Bangladesh today into India? And will the Indians just mow them down? Will they just slaughter them? This is climate change world. And the poor countries have a great sense of the urgency of this. They understand it as it is about education. It's about economic development. It's about fairness. It's about treating like indigenous people, because most places in the world have, there's that sort of the main population that's, more or less urbanized and educated, but there's always those little small groups on the outside of practically every society. How do you get them included? And in fact, how do you listen to them? Because they're so wise in many ways about the way they're conducting their lives. Anyway, I think the small countries get that this is that really what we're talking about is decades, maybe centuries of terror unless we get a hold of this thing, that it will be starvation and catastrophe and warfare, just endless warfare. So the rich countries,
right.
on the other hand, the rich countries are pretty sure that all we have to do is set a price for carbon, and carbon will be traded in a global market like the New York Stock Exchange. And if you are able to reduce your carbon use this year, you'll be able to sell your extra carbon credits to somebody who's not been very efficient, but they'll pay, and that we will slowly, very slowly, probably taking out anytime there's any kind of global economic crisis, we'll stop this, but we will slowly lower the carbon budgets until we get to net zero. And that will just let private business and big governments kind of make choices within this. And they're not as interested in the capacity building of the people all over the world. They're not interested in, the actual protective programs that people are going to need because of the effects of this changing climate. So it is, I guess, everybody at these meetings has agreed. There are no climate deniers at these meetings. I can't stress that enough.
Thank you. That's great.
There are no climate deniers, but instead what there are these people who have such a different take on it that they're pretty incompatible. And so the meetings oftentimes feel as if people aren't really understanding one another very well.
It's kind of like this whose fault is it type of thing. That seems like what you described, almost like, like Mother Earth is kind of coming from a perspective like, okay, some wrong was done, and he sits down these two children, and one's just like, well, I can actually get out of this, and the other one's like, I'm literally drowning in a flood. So that analogy took a very dark turn. But the point of the matter is, the much smaller countries, rich or poor, I guess those terms can kind of be a little offensive sometimes, but hey, at the end of the day, this thing is much more of an economic battle than anything else, because if you can afford to, like you said, either prevent some of these things from happening, or if you think about it, a lot of these countries that were less populated had a lot of ecological things near it, whether it be Pompeii and its volcano, or just some of the tsunamis that affected Southeast Asia. But I think that what's kind of happening is like, I'm not really my brother's keeper, but unfortunately, like, we keep coming back in full rhetoric. Your voice and whatever we do kind of affects everyone's backyard. So it's not gonna really separate because your country's okay. Because at the end of the day, if your country is thriving, what ends up happening is you get an influx of other people coming there to sort of kind of thrive as well. I mean, we all want to survive. That's innate. That's instinctual. Even the planet's fighting us off of it, which I think it's trying to survive as well. But yeah, the human issue is definitely apparent. I think like what you said, it can kind of become more bickering, and I really wonder how much gets done at the end of all of this, because there's such polar opposites. Like, there will really be no medium. So democracy in this particular aspect becomes almost irrelevant, because we're voting on something that there's almost a 50% split. So things kind of inch their way closer to it, even though that's, like you said, one of the plans was to kind of, I guess, eliminate net zero carbon. It almost sounds like credit. I'm not even gonna kind of hold you. It sounds like if they were giving out credit cards for Earth Day almost, and you were able to do that, because if you could make it even on a micro scale, and people's homes, your cars and everything, just as much as being taxed or looked at, you're also being looked at for how much your carbon footprint is on a much more personal level. I really wonder how that would kind of affect this much more, like you said, this global scheme of the countries kind of moving amongst each other. Because once you get large enough as a country, there are ways to kind of politically move yourself in a lot of different ways. I
Yes.
don't want war, and I think a lot of people don't want war, though war does cost money and make money, so it can kind of be a catch-22 with these type of things. But unfortunately, we don't have the resources, and that's what you were saying earlier. So I think our resources have changed quite a bit. So it puts everyone in this perspective of how can we share them evenly, and if that's something that the more richer countries are even willing to do.
Right.
Which, is that going to sacrifice their population? I can understand where they're coming from both sides. So it's a lot. It's such a big topic, but like you said, no one's denying it. So that's the best part, like there's so much
Yes.
going on that you can't really deny some of the things that are going on. I
And
just mentioned
that's
that
the weird
to
thing about coming
put it
back
from
to the
everyone.
US.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
come back to the US and we're still having this stupid conversation about whether or not there's climate change, and if so, the human beings cause it. But when you go to international meetings, nobody in the room would have the audacity to say such a ridiculous thing.
Yeah, it's almost embarrassing.
There is a global consensus that this is a serious problem. That should be of comfort right there.
I have a question. Do you believe that we're just not experiencing it as much as the other countries? Is that why it's so, or is it more of a media thing?
Yeah, well, ask the people in California how much they're experiencing it.
Well,
but
there you go.
I do
You're
think
exactly right.
I think that probably if you're kind of in the temperate part of the northern hemisphere or the temperate part of Eurasia, you're having less effect. And in the global south and the even the Mediterranean places are being hammered. And see, we're seeing it here, but we don't really see it when we see it. Here in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, our December temperatures were 4.5 degrees above average for the month. And in January, and that was December, and in January, again, we were 4.5 degrees above. And we've had like 9 of the last 12 months, we've had below average precipitation. So in some ways, we're a place that has a profusion of water, and yet we're in a bit of a drought. And we're actually having outrageous temperature swings upward. And yet, that just makes us a nicer December or a nicer January, right? I mean,
today, yeah, exactly.
But now we're having a horrible February. This month, our temperatures will be below average, I think, for February. Right. But in any case, it's here. And if you choose to look at it, you can see it, and you can say, well, maybe I'm going to have to change the way I garden, or maybe I'm going to have to water more. I'm going to have to give up watering my plants, and all these kind of choices that people are going to find themselves forced to make.
Yes, I understand. I mean, I had another anecdote as well. I got a chance to read this, but I hear that in Jamaica, their marijuana farms are actually running out. They're running out of crops because they're having dry seasons and over raining. It's not helping it. So I thought that was kind of an interest.
That is interesting. That's an important piece of data. Hello.
I think we might have lost him, but no, it is really interesting. I think and to I've been quiet the past a little bit, but to kind of start to talk a little bit. Yeah, I think with everything, and to kind of go back with something I wanted to mention earlier with, say, jobs, with especially with the whole nuclear versus solar power debate and everything. It's like, okay, so there's this sense of, jobs will be lost, but at the same time, I think Tarik is back on.
Sorry about that, guys.
Hello.
No worries. We're just I was kind of filling in a few things that I hadn't had a chance to talk about earlier, so I was just
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, why are you apologizing?
I feel like I hogged your professor.
No, no, not at all. This is I love the discussions that we've made thus far, and I think seriously though, I think with jobs, I think it's really interesting to analyze the sense like, okay, yeah, we will lose a lot of jobs, but at the same time, it's like, but there will be a lot of opportunities for jobs to also be created. Maybe not necessarily what you did prior to that, but there will be lots of opportunities for jobs, and I agree with the both of you that we're at a point where we just kind of have to say let's do it, especially with the Green New Deal, everything going on with the current climate crisis, and with the weather especially. I remember it was I'm wanting to say it was mid to late November here in Illinois, and it was that 70-degree day. I don't know if you remember that or not, Tom, but
Mhm.
it was
Yes.
that 70-degree day, like the middle of the week, and everyone's like, man, shorts, it's so excited, great. It's great to have 70-degree day weather. And I remember myself and one of my best friends, we were the only ones to actively say, at least in my area where I was at, the only ones that actively say like, that's great and all, but this is like really awful. This is
Right.
not good. We should not be having a 73-degree day in Illinois in November. Like that. That should not be happening. And now here we are in February, and over the weekend in Illinois, the high was on Sunday, it was 5 degrees, and the low was like five below, and that's not even what it felt like. And that right there, I mean, it's saying something. It's showing something. And so, for me, something that I've noticed over the past few years, that it's like you can do so much, you can talk so much, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to be interested, unfortunately. And it's kind of come to the same thing with the current pandemic, where people won't really take it seriously until they're affected by it.
That's true.
And it is kind of, I guess, wild to me to think that you have to wait until you're affected by it to take it seriously, or to simply even acknowledge that it's a thing. And I can't tell you how many people I've heard or read about having passed away due to complications with COVID, because, and they will say like, I didn't believe it at first, but now here I am. And same
Right.
with the people I've talked to, so many people that like, oh, I didn't necessarily believe in the climate crisis or and global warming, or the fact that we have to do this and this with saving the earth. And when it's right in front of them. I knew someone who had no clue, did not really believe in the whole save the turtles and all that movement, until they went down to on a vacation. They went to the ocean, and they actually saw a turtle being like rescued and out of the plastic and everything. And
Mhm.
that right there changed their mind.
Yeah.
It's that fact that we have to experience something in order for us to change our mind. And so I kind of want to hear
Yes.
what everyone else's thoughts are on here, but it's what how do we improve that, instead of trying to wait until everyone is affected by this? We can't afford to do that. We have to do it now. So how
Well,
do we move forward?
I can I answer the question for a bit?
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that kind of what Professor Tom said earlier, where we kind of all have a part, and we don't mean to bash anyone that's not already doing this. I think we're all at different levels, and this kind of goes back to Caleb's three-step layer. We're discovering new things, we're understanding new things, and then you reflect on did that work or not. So I think there's layers to it. Some people are just finding out, and that's okay. Little steps are great. And my other aspect is, yes, we do have time. Everyone should be affected. I think that everyone should go out and try to do something. Like, it's going to connect because everyone has this greater animus that's part of the earth. Whatever it may be. Some people love dolphins, and Like they can even imagine the things that dolphins go through until they go there and they experience it and see that people are, whaling people. I mean, not whaling people, but whaling people are destroying certain aspects and ecosystems. So I think that they have to just jump out. I think there has to be more incentivizing, more interest in just finding out about it. I think the curiosity is great, to be honest. That was my thought.
Yeah. I wish that all young people would have significant natural experience, I mean, I use that expression cautiously. I mean, I think we live in nature. I don't know where you guys are, but I'm in a room right now in a warm house, and that's nature too, right? In its own weird human way. This is a very natural setting. But anyway, you know what I mean. I would like for everybody to have some outdoors experience. Everybody. Now, it doesn't seem very practical to just make that all happen overnight, but I would want that for every young person so that they have some sense of these things, about what is at play and what is at risk. But I got a couple other thoughts for you guys, and maybe this is kind of maybe where you want to end this. One of my thoughts is that one part of me as a rhetorician is I really do believe in some ways in some very practical politics, and we don't have to have everybody on board. We live in a democratic society, so we have to have 50% plus one. And when we get 50% plus one, we can jam it down the throats of the 49 plus however many, right? Mm-hmm. We just need enough to win. And I'm be happy to win politically on many, 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 many of these issues, even if there are a lot of people who don't agree with it or don't understand it or don't give a damn about it. So I am willing to be pretty hard-headed politically. I want to try to convince everybody, but I don't have any illusion that I'm going to do that. And so my final thought, maybe, unless you guys want to talk on and on, but my final thought is, I've been thinking about the name of your program, Identity. And I look back through some of the programs, and they are about, religious identities and sexual identities, and which are all fantastic questions that need addressed. And so I had to ask myself, am I on this program to tell you, probably primarily young people, that they need a green identity? And my reaction to that is no. You don't have to, own the stuffed animal and carry the identity card in your wallet that says you're a member of the club. You don't have to, give $50 to Greenpeace or the Sierra Club this year. You don't have to be a card carrying member. I don't care if you have a green identity, but I think everybody needs to have a green orientation. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, it's a more persistent but more gentle kind of thing. I mean, you can say, I'm a this or I'm a that, and that's great. You don't have to say I'm a green, but what I do want you to have is, like, in your everyday consciousness, an awareness of just some basic ecological concepts and a very profound engagement with the idea that all of our environmental systems do have limits. There are places where you can cross the line and then you've ruined that environment. And because that's the drama of ecology as a science, that's the drama of environmentalism, that we've got to stay on the good side of the line. And that should be in everybody's thinking. On the 6th of August in 1945, we dropped a bomb on Hiroshima. And that day, we learned that the human beings can destroy every human being. Okay? We would do it, politically and technically and so forth. And it just entered into our consciousness. On the 22nd of April in 1970, on Earth Day, we needed for it to enter into our consciousness that not only could we destroy all human beings and many other species with us, not only could we do that, but we could do it through the most intimate actions of our daily lives. We could do it by, how we run our faucet. We can do it by how we flush our toilet. We can do it with what chemicals we sprinkle on our garden. We can do it with what detergents we wash ourselves and our clothing with. We can do it, right? We can do it with these little tiny actions. We don't have to drop an atom bomb. Now, if everybody had that orientation, that they understood that we can cross these lines to doom, then I would think we might have a realistic hope of having an ongoing conversation about all of these problems at once.
Yep, I completely agree with you there. I actually, to kind of tie into something that you have written, your actual paper on future green orientation. That was one of the first things that I read of yours when you sent me a bunch of stuff. I was really fascinated, and I'm glad that you were able to tie in the sense of having a green orientation. And I really do agree with you on that sense of not necessarily, and to almost kind of look at where I have put myself and to how I have tried to be an advocate for the environment and such. It's like we're not necessarily trying, and not necessarily, but not at all trying to say that this is, you have to go green and everything. But I agree, having this green orientation, not even the necessarily full on green identity. And one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have you on, and I'm actually, to be honest, I'm glad to hear that you thought that way. You thought of the show that way, and you thought of your perspective that way, because I feel like that's a question Tarik, we should probably start asking our guests more often, because that's a great question to be able to kind of further discover someone's identity just based off of accepting an invitation to being on a podcast about identity. And so it is interesting to me to see where you were coming from. And for myself, I can publicly say one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to have you on, and especially I wanted to reach out to you, was actually because exactly what you said was that sense of thinking, oh, I wonder if they want me to talk about this green identity or anything. But it's basically the exact opposite. I knew that you wouldn't agree with that and you wouldn't talk about that. And so it's that sense of because it's being in your class, you learn a lot. But definitely, I think having this green orientation, being able to have kind of a foot in the door almost sense is at this point the best there. But Tarik, do you have anything to add there before we wrap up?
No, I think that was a lot, and I'm just happy to have you guys on, man. It's been great.
Yeah, it really has been great, and I think that's a great stopping point. What do you think, Tom?
I think it's great. It's been a pleasure to be with you gentlemen this evening, and I hope maybe at least two people out there in the universe hear what we've had to say.
Yes, indeed.
I agree. We've had some listeners in and out here, which has been nice, and then they've been I hope that they've learned a lot, and I hope that they've been able to take as much away from this as I know myself and Tarik will as well. And if you want, Tom, you can go and turn on your camera so everyone can see.
Oh boy!
Only if you want to.
This will wreck it. There you go.
Woo!
That's the man. That's the man.
There he is.
Well, I think some more people in the universe are going to hear it and see you. Believe me, this goes around, man. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge. Like, who knows? Someone's going to connect to this for sure. So all you listeners out there, definitely don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, check us on Spotify. Right, Caleb? I almost got it.
Right.
YouTube, anything that you're thinking of. We're almost there. We're on Twitch, guys. We have merch. Check us out on Instagram, of course, as well.
Are you doing the thing?
I'm kind of doing the thing. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing now do the thing, Caleb. I appreciate you
You want me
guys
to do it?
listening.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening. This has been the Identity Podcast. It's been such an honor to be able to do this yet again. Episode 27, Environmental Advocacy, featuring Tom Duncanson. Thank you again, Tom, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute honor, and of course, it's been great to. It's been a while since I've talked to you, so it's been pretty great to talk to you again.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, it's been a joy as always, my fellow and lovely co-host Tarik. As always, it's an honor to know you and to
Oh man, appreciate you.
getting
This
all
has been
sappy
awesome.
over here. Well, this has been the Identity Podcast. We hope you have all enjoyed. As always, every Wednesday at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, you can catch the Identity Podcast. And you might be asking yourself, well, where can I catch the Identity Podcast? Well, guess what? You can catch it on Facebook. Find Your ID NYC. You can catch it right there on their Facebook page. You can catch it on the YouTube page, Identity Podcast, and the X Shows, separate YouTube pages there. And the Identity Podcast is now on Twitch, which we're live on right now. So you can actually catch us on Twitch at the Identity Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all those platforms at the Identity Podcast. You can also check out the Identity Podcast on all streaming platforms such as Spotify and Apple. And as always, if you want to sponsor us, well, you can actually email us at press@findyouridnyc.com. Don't forget to listen to us on Brick Media every Tuesday and shop Identity Podcast merch on Teespring. Link is on all bios, including the Instagram bio. It has been such a wonderful time talking about environmental advocacy, green economics, climate crisis, all sorts of things. These well, a wonderful time talking about these things, but overall talking about um, not great things at that. And so, but it's continuing. I tell you, the environmental series is continuing right here for the Identity Podcast. Next week, February 17th, Chelsea Webster, based out of California, she will be on the show. Very excited to have her. She's very knowledgeable, and I know she's very excited to be on. Cannot wait to have that show. So it has been such a joy. Don't forget to check out our friend and our partner, Ivy Rivera, and her Roots Revival Interfaith Church. Reverend Ivy Rivera, very exciting stuff what she's doing as psychic, creating this church of all religions, of all awakenings to come every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. They are awesome. So happy to be partnered with them and to know them so well and call them dear friends. So it has been an absolute joy, and I hope you've been able to discover, understand, and reflect right here on the Identity Podcast. We'll catch you next week, February 17th, with Chelsea Webster for the Identity Podcast.